Like a little chart. I don't know if it'd be useful to share that.
Sure, and then I'll flip through. I separated out the articles that I had open.
I know we've been rattling off these numbers, article numbers for a while, but we really haven't, had any. I just think this is a better format to actually look, see what the articles are, what they're titled, and what the parties' positions are. And I know full well before you even say it that this is my version of what the county's position is. However, if I'm not far off, but this is not a proposal. This is just nothing more than a little worksheet to use to hopefully get some clarity on stuff and maybe have some discussion. And I guess I'll just go through it. Article 3, non-discrimination. Union's positions to include a contract provision on the topic. County's positions to leave it out of the CBA.
Look, can I stop you for 1 second?
Sure.
As we go through it, maybe just a couple of them to clarify. The language that the union wants to include is language that we had originally put into the agreement, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Right,
Yeah,
the
the one that we originally TA'd and then it was pulled out.
All right. It's nothing new, it's just that same language, right?
Right. Article 9, and again, this is to benefit both sides, so if I'm missing something, or if you have questions, feel free to ask. Article 9, which is union dues deductions, the union's positions that we will consider the $200 annual fee with a complete tender agreement, and county's positions wants the union to pay $200 annual fee. We've said in the last couple of sessions we want to pose to it if it's going to get us everything else we want in the agreement. Article 10, bargaining unit work. The union's position to prevent non-bargaining employees from performing bargaining unit work unless certain criterion is met. And the county's position wants the right to use non-bargaining to avoid paying overtime. That seemed to be the sticking point, as I understood. Article 19, seniority. Some of these I'll just start with. The county's position was offering a non-grievable seniority rights provision, which was, I don't have in writing, but we talked last time about a concept proposal, and our response at that time was the union accepts the county's concept, but needs the ability to grieve violations, otherwise it doesn't have too much teeth to it. Article 23, annual leave. The union's position is to lower the employment anniversary requirements for accrual increases. We just changed a couple of the milestones that you have to achieve to move up, the accrual ladder. The county's position was to keep the status quo, except exemption of accrual for employees in the first 90 days, if I understood that correctly.
Yes, I don't have your proposal in front of me, but I thought you added the hours, not the time.
Our most recent proposal was to, as an example, change 5 years to 4 years, or 10 years to 8 years, or something along those lines. But, we can get into that. Article 30, workers' compensation. The union's position is to keep the status quo. The county's position was to eliminate the supplemental paid benefit that's currently in effect. Article 31, leave time excluded, the topic. The union's position is to keep the status quo. And the county's position is to eliminate all absences counting as hours worked for overtime computations. Article 42, employee performance evaluation. The union was okay with the language. We came pretty close to TAing the language at one point, but we didn't want it to have something to tie into wage increases. And then in the last bargaining session, the county's position was to use the employee performance evaluation in year 2 for performance or merit-based increase. Article 43, lunch and breaks. The reason I split this up because Article 43 was in response to the county's Article 43. Our Article 43 proposal was titled lunch and breaks, and the county's was titled work schedule and overtime. And the union's position on lunch and breaks was that transit drivers should be entitled to a 30-minute uninterrupted lunch. I think we seem to have an agreement in concept of the brakes portion of it. And then the county's position, to my understanding, was that the county wants to exempt transit drivers from lunch, and wants similar language to leave time excluded. And what I'm referencing there is in the county's Article 43 work schedule and overtime proposal. There is language in there that mirrors the leave time excluded proposal. So we kind of narrowed it down to just breaks and lunch, but your proposal is a little bit wider on for 43. 48 holidays. Our union's position was to keep the status quo. I didn't put anything in the county's position. I guess I ran out of time at that point. And from what I understand, there was a change in the county's change in the status quo with the county's proposal to, if an employee wasn't scheduled to work that day, that they don't get holiday pay. I think in a nutshell, if I remember that correctly. And we're just interested in keeping it as it is. Article 49, wages and salaries. Union's position was to have an across-the-board $1 an hour increase in year one and negotiate wages in year two. And again, it's not, from what I understand, the county's position was, as of last bargaining session, was to accept or to use the 3% across the board increase that the BOCC was, I guess, recommending in year one, and then split the across the board and merit increase in year two, even though that split is to be determined. And then Article 56, I think we're both on the same page with a 2-year agreement. And then Article X, disciplinary procedure. The union wants just cause for discipline provision, and the county does not want a discipline provision. Am I that far off, or?
You're not very far off. It's a good summary. A couple of points are not exactly what our proposal is, and we have some modified proposals today. So the system clarifying it.
Again, this is just nothing more than a reference.
It's a good worksheet.
Well, what do you want to do? Do you want to go over your new proposals today, or?
Well, why don't I start towards the bottom and on 49, wages and salary, and clarify what our proposal is on that. And it's tied to 56, which is duration 2 years. So our concept would be that in year one, which is fiscal year 13-14, all the bargaining unit members, even those who are topped out, would receive a wage adjustment. And it would be a percentage base that the Board of County Commissioners establishes at the budget hearing that covers non-bargaining employees. I think you're accurate. I think the discussion to date has been 3%. But obviously, those are workshops, and the public hearings on budget have not yet occurred. But assuming, for the sake of argument, that what has been discussed at the workshops gets approved in the final budget approval, for year one, there would be a 3% wage adjustment for all employees, regardless of top out. In year two, we would want to see all wage increases tied to performance. Now, knowing, I give a lot of thought to your comments about the task of establishing performance standards and how performance scores convert to wages. We acknowledge that that's an issue that needs to be bargained, and there needs to be time to do it. So that's where we brought in, or we're thinking about bringing in, reopener language, something to the effect of the formula for converting performance scores to wage increases and implementing those wage increases would be the subject of reopen negotiations for the second year. Okay. When that would start, we're open for discussion on that.
Okay, so that's different than our last bargaining sessions. That, I mean, I thought I understood it, but you guys wanted to just get the formula figured out now. Now we're changing. Are you changing your position to having a second year?
Yeah, I went back, I listened to some of the comments you made on the tape, and agree in some part that it's difficult to get a task like that done in a timely fashion. And what that would do is that would further delay getting an agreement for the contract if we put that off. So maybe we could talk about how much time we think would be necessary to do that. You know, thinking advance to October the 1st, 14. How much before that do you think we would need to negotiate that provision?
When does the budget get solidified? We're in the throes of doing that now, right?
September 24th.
September 24th? And the workshops are occurring in August, right?
They have them scheduled pretty much every other week.
When was the first?
They had one this week.
There's one next week.
Was the one this week, the first one?
There's a board meeting. There's a workshop too? I know there was one this
I
week.
know
There's
there's
one in 2
a
weeks.
workshop, I'm not sure if it's next week or the weekend.
It's kind of every other week.
When was the first workshop for budget matters?
Well, it gets submitted, the proposed budget gets submitted to the board, depending on the calendar, say around July 10th.
That's the administrator, all right, submitting it?
Right.
Okay. In
So,
July.
of course, there's a few months worth of work that goes on before that, but the board sees it for the first time July 10th. You know, give or take a few days.
Well, my concern is that, if the budget's already determined, it's already figured out, then how the heck can we bargain, you know, if something's already set in stone? And that's kind of just the way the animal is with public,
Yeah, that is the fact everywhere there's bargaining in the public sector, which is we have a statutory time period to adopt an annual budget. And that budget must be adopted by a date certain under state law before October the 1st, as the fiscal year begins October the 1st. So, yeah, you're right. I mean, there's always what comes first. In a perfect world, we would bargain a contract, and it would have a percentage amount, let's say if it's a percentage contract. And that's the amount that would be taken to the board and ask them to appropriate that amount. However, the reality is I've been through this process where that, you know, where the amount came first and then the board approval came second, and I've seen boards reject that amount, because what happens is at the public hearings, there's another voice that's not in the room with us negotiating a contract, and that's the public.
so, the obvious is that we need to commence bargaining prior to the budget being approved. I mean, that's a no-brainer. I don't know if we're gonna be able to, if the county administrator needs to have her budget submitted by the middle of July, is that the same every year, or is that
Yeah.
very? Then it would seem, to me, that we would like to have an audience with the county administrator to express our proposals at least, you know, and then, continue bargaining, I guess. So what's that, July would be, that's month 7, and October is month 10, right? So that's 90 days out. So if we went 120 days out, that would put us in June.
So let's talk about what the task would be, and also kind of figure what the task would be, is that there'll be a performance measurement instrument, you know, a form that would be filled out. Obviously, the county's going to take the initiative in drafting that. And we would give that to you in the bargaining process and look for your feedback, comment on it. And then embedded in that document is a conversion chart that says if you get a score of X, that converts to a percentage increase of Y. And I would think that it's the latter part that is of equal, if not more, interest to you than the beginning part.
Yeah, well, it's all important without a doubt, but in terms of dollars and cents, the second part is definitely more a concern.
So
I got a question. Is this performance evaluation that was given to me, is this pretty much what you guys are going with, or is that still being developed, or?
I don't know if you have the one that,
SBE, BEMEA, what's
I
a?
have no idea. What
Employee
you just
performance
said,
evaluation
ESP?
form.
I'll tell you, John, we got one up there.
Well, this is it right here.
Mhm.
And this is what I got from, I guess you got an email with me.
Well, it's been, it's the one on the website. It's on the website.
this book here, which I think is like how to facilitate the evaluation process. You know, like training. and
That's the training, yeah, because if it's the one that went out with the training, then that's the right one, yeah.
And, I mean, so this thing, is this still being developed, or is
No,
it?
that's what we're using.
And I don't mean to sound, I don't know, mean-spirited or sarcastic or anything, but it doesn't seem very polished. It seems very, amateurish, I guess. It's, the different categories are all overlapping.
Well, you were good with polished, unpolished, but.
I didn't write, so
I'd say
I
you'd
don't-
step over the line to insult me on that one.
I have to
So
step
for
over.
whoever drafted it.
I don't mean to be disrespectful, even if I am. But I'm serious, I mean, I
thought he was saying
I have absolutely zero training in creating a performance evaluation. No. And I can pick this thing apart and.
Well, you got 6 months to get ready to be able to do that.
Well, you know
I'm
what?
under
surprised.
There has
I'm
never
not-
been an evaluation in the history of the workplace, that anybody liked.
It's not a matter of liking or disliking, it's a matter of, I'm surprised that this is what you guys are doing.
Well, we're focusing on the values, that's the five sections.
Right,
And,
the values are the
and
good
goals.
start, and then.
Goals is the other very important aspect of it. Setting goals and measurable goals, and the goals align with the strategic plan, and where everybody's contribution is to the strategic plan. So it's all.
Well, let me ask this, is the proposal, just going back to bargaining, is the county's revised wage proposal or duration, is it going to be worded in a way that, this performance evaluation is a component of year 2, or is it just, we're going to bargain for year 2?
We're going to bargain for year 2.
Understanding that your position is that performance evaluation is a huge part of it. But as far as the CBA is just going to just say, these are the wages for year 1, and the contract opens on such and such a date to bargain for year 2.
That's correct.
Okay. Well then, we can just put that on shelf for until that time, in my opinion. So, getting
But
back,
we have the right to use whatever form we want, right? I mean, we're in agreement with that.
This one here will take effect this October, they'll do this October, right?
Right.
but it's not tied into wages. It's
No, but
Yes.
it will give us an idea. We'll talk about that after.
I just, if the CBA is not going to reference this document specifically, then we really don't need to talk about it right now. We'll fry that fish when the time
Let me
comes.
read you again, and this is just draft, that's why I don't have it really to hand to you. I've been working on it. So the language would be something to the effect of, for fiscal year 14-15, which is year 2, the employees are eligible for a wage increase, a wage adjustment, derived from the employee's annual performance evaluation score. The formula for converting performance score to wages and the implementation date of evaluation-based wages will be the subject of reopened negotiations. Which is what I thought you asked for last time, in a roundabout way, by making the point that if we're gonna tie money to performance, then you get a voice in the process. And you get a voice in the process.
Well, what you just read is a specific reference to the employee performance form. Or is it saying, read it again, is it generalizing a performance form or a specific document that exists?
It does not reference a
Can
specific.
you just read it one more time?
I'll read it one more time, okay? In fiscal year 14-15, employees are eligible to receive a base wage increase derived from the employee's annual performance evaluation score. The formula for converting performance score to wages the wage increase, and the implementation date of that process is the subject of reopened negotiations. I left blank when we would do that, because that's what I wanted to talk to you about, how long you thought it would take. And then I also had, just so we know how that all ends, the outcome of the reopened negotiations, we'll do an addendum or an MOU to attach to the contract.
Well, I understand that, not necessarily agreeing with the concept just yet. I want to talk to my committee about a few things, but, so gone is the underlying across-the-board component of year 2 that was being discussed last time. It's no longer,
This is our modified proposal, we just outlined.
not to say that that can't be negotiated, because the increase is negotiable. When it gets implemented, what part of it's based on the performance, what part is not, all that stuff is subject to negotiations. You need to. Well, what is your idea of how much time is needed?
My experience elsewhere has been, it takes probably a minimum of 4 months.
Puts us in June,
Yeah.
20 days. That's before the administrator submits her, that works for me.
So no later we would begin. Now, there's nothing that would stop us from starting earlier. If we could get something ready and packaged together, we would.
It's hard to tell when we will know
Yeah.
what we want to do.
Yeah. So June sounds like enough time to be able to do it.
I mean, you want to go with the number, or you want to just say June 1st?
What do you mean by number?
I mean, 20 days.
Oh.
Is that right?
I don't care one way or the other, I'm just wondering. It's less work, it's getting the calendar out and counting.
How about if we just say that we will reopen on or about June the 1st?
So that proposal just references, and you consider it as part of the wage proposal or part of duration?
Well, they go hand in hand, because the duration, if it's a 2-year contract, this is our proposal for the 2nd year.
But as far as what,
I mean, if we were successful in how it's done in next June, we'd probably ask you at that time if you want to extend the contract 1 year as well. Because by that time, you will have identified any issues related to the contract for year 1. And maybe it's possible to do that. We're open on that. The key for us is, if we're going to spend money in year 1, we want to buy something in year 2, and what we want to buy is this process. Otherwise, we're just doing what is the status quo right now.
the status quo is not giving anybody anything.
Well, the status quo is the Board of County Commissioners decide on an annual basis what people get, and you don't really get much of a voice in that process. That is the status quo. And I don't think that's the status quo that you've represented the employees are comfortable with. So I'm trying to get something that they can look at the contract and understand. Looking forward beyond next October, waiting every year for the board to act, to know what they can anticipate. And the philosophy here, the philosophy of the county administrator, is that the county should spend its money related to performance, and that everybody should have the opportunity to earn money based upon performance. Everybody. And
Yeah.
then employees should participate in understanding how they can earn their money through performance. So there's the goal-setting concept that was discussed earlier. We anticipate the employee having a role in that.
Well, regardless if all employees embrace that concept. I know the concern with most all employers is how is it determined? I mean, that's always, how is it determined someone's performing? And who is it that's the judge, and who's basing, how are they basing their, you know, their evaluation, what are they basing it on? I mean, that's always where the trouble, you know, occurs.
That's why you have quantitative measures.
Right, well, for what I've seen, I'm not, you know, I'm not very impressed with, and there's so much, you know, room for abuse in this thing, and it's just so, it's just based on people's opinions, it's based on, you know, I wouldn't mind putting some suggestions, you know, in this thing to where at least I can tell employees, like, I know what this